Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another Empires and Puzzles video. And in this video, I want to look at the new Fated Summon pool of heroes and give you my thoughts on who I think is worth considering, who I think is worth ignoring, and let you do with that what you will. It's nice they changed it. I just find it a bit disappointing the way they handle this, where they kind of put so many heroes that aren't relevant anymore or have low relevance. And I think it's frustrating because, on the other hand, Gemstone Legends has a mercy system as well, but that just means you get any of the available legendary heroes in the game. So it could be a less desirable one depending on which heroes you desire, but it could also be one of the best heroes in the game because they don't create this subset of heroes to pull from. So they had done their mercy system first, and then Empires and Puzzles followed afterward, and they did it in their very Zynga way, which is to make it worse somehow. So anyways, if you're interested in a system that is much better and just a game that's more free to play friendly, check out Gemstone Legends. They have a mercy system. They've got all kinds of great stuff from player feedback, and just has a different feel compared to Empires and Puzzles. So links in the description if you're interested in checking that out. If you use one of the download links in the description, you'll get a free $50 starter bonus to help get you moving. So I highly recommend doing that. Links in the description. And yeah, I think close to 30,000 people from Empires and Puzzles have come over already. So it's been quite popular with people that have played Empires and Puzzles first. So give it a go. I've got also a playlist, Gemstone Legends tutorials, that covers pretty much everything I can think of to help get you started and answer questions of what thing should you do first, blah, blah, blah. So anyways, links in the description. Check that out. So let's see what we have here. As always, the bottom row, or the top row, I guess you could say, the bottom tier, but the top row technically, are all Season 1 heroes. So the only utility I see here, and the only reason that I would ever choose one of these over other heroes, is if you already have costumes for that hero and you just simply think that costume is so good that you want to have another copy. So like June or Marjana are great examples where if you have the costume, those are strong, fast heroes. And I could see being like, you know what, I want another double costume June, like he's that good, or something like that. But otherwise, you can ignore those because there are just far better choices in here. Next row down, you've got Zimkitha, who I think the costume for her that came out is fantastic. Standard version, not so good, and these stats are super dated, like under 700 defense is a little ridiculous. The damage is pretty weak. 25% attack is almost nothing, and you cleanse last. Like, I think there are far better options in here. So if it was the costume, yeah, she's excellent, but this base version, not so much. Zelene, it's nice to have a Dispel, but again, very weak stats. She's got about the same defense as Zimkitha, but like 150 less HP. So it would be really hard for me to suggest anyone take this hero because, yes, you get a Dispel, you get some attack down, but keeping them alive in a modern battle with more modern heroes is going to be really difficult. Raphael, decent defense for building as a healer or support where you're going to be heavy into the defense and HP. Slow speed is the biggest downside. He's a very powerful healer, though, because first he brings you up to 50, so he's really going to 50%. He's really going to shine when you are nearly dead, which is not a place you really want to be. So the place that he's best is also extremely risky to be. Not that you would necessarily try to wait if you're, to be more almost dead, so you heal more, but that's when he's going to shine most, is all I want to say. So yeah, if you heals all allies who have less than 50% HP to 50%, and then gives a heal over turn. So if you have more than 50%, you're just going to get this heal over turn, but it's still pretty decent, probably about 250. No, probably less than that. 200 and something, 225 maybe per turn if you have troops that have a healing bonus on them. And then cleanses and defense against special skills. So that's pretty good for keeping you alive. This is the most worthless passive he could ever possibly have. Okay, Milosi still has utility, very, very weak stats, unfortunately. He's a hero of the month from 2 years later, but he still has pretty close stats to like Zelene or Zimkitha when you factor in the combination of all three stats together. Like his defense is higher, but his HP is lower, and his attack is about on par, which is interesting. I think to me that says that power creep has accelerated significantly recently, because there was a 2-year period where not much was happening, and then from then to now, it's just ridiculous. So very fast speed is a great thing. 300% damage is pretty weak, but can't cast any new status effects on enemies or allies for 3 turns. Critical chance is okay. Immune to defense down is pretty nice, but basically he has utility. There are some really powerful heroes with status effect, buffs and ailments, and he just renders them useless at very fast speed. So he has a good Ludwig counter. He's a good Alfright counter. Any of these heroes that rely on statuses, positive or negative, he's going to be good for. So there are situations where I could still recommend him. You'll just need to keep in mind that his damage is quite low, so you're going to need to have some other damaging heroes as a part of that team, or he's going to buy you some time. He's going to render one of the heroes you're facing useless or less useful, and then you need to be able to capitalize on that. And if you can't, you're going to lose, and he's not going to help you. So that's using him effectively is going to be an overall team synergy kind of thing. But he does offer good utility still. Just got to factor in the stats are going to be a bit weak. If you've been watching this channel for more than 5 minutes, you have to know how much I like Grimble. You can build him totally as a support. So he's got great defense. He's got pretty decent HP. He's in a tough class for me because that's where a lot of healers are, and you need to have a decent amount of healers in your roster. So there's going to be some competition for these emblems, but no one can do what he can do as well as he can do it, which is saying something for him being out, maybe close to 4 years. But yeah, he's fantastic. If you're facing minions, he is going to make any, assuming you have a level 23 troop for him, he's going to make any slow purple hero functionally fast speed. So your Ludwigs, any other heroes, that's my favorite combination is Ludwig and Grimble, because if you can charge Grimble and you have some minions on the other team, then you can charge Ludwig, and if you can charge Ludwig, you can probably win. So fantastic hero. I don't know if I'd recommend people ascend multiple of them. We're still in a meta where minions are quite seen quite often, so it is good to have some minion removing heroes. Like we just faced an alliance that had all Arco tanks, and it was quite difficult to deal with because he's got the stone skin. He is creating really chunky minions, so it kind of stressed your roster for how many minion removers you can have. That's not a common strategy that I've seen, so I wouldn't worry about no matter who you face, you need to have 6 minion removers or something. That's not the case, but if you don't have anything like that in your roster, this can be a really powerful addition, assuming, again, like with Milosi, you need a synergy around this hero. And so his utility is providing mana, and that can help speed up those slow heroes when, it can be really hard to get 4 matches of the same color before you start losing heroes. So if you can only make 3 and the 4th is created, via killing minions, that's great. The other thing to factor in is his damage is not that high because his attack stat is low. But say, for example, we're going to use an extreme example to make the point very clear. Say, for example, you are against that Arco tank and there are 3 minions on that Arco. You're going to remove those first. So that's the very first thing that happens. That's going to be the equivalent of 90% HP. So that's probably 1,500 something like that, 1500, 1400, depending on the hero and their limit break status. The equivalent of 1500 damage. That's an extreme example, but it just goes to show that if you were having to fight through those minions normally, that's going to soak up a huge amount of damage. And so if you think about he's doing that before he actually attacks, then he's dealing probably 1800 damage, the equivalent of. And if those were all saturated with minions, let's see, 15 of them would be 12 tiles of mana. So you could take a slow hero from having 0 mana to fully charged with one charge of his. Excellent hero, great utility. It's nice that he's got this resist against blind, so he's never going to miss. And the destroys all minions cannot be dodged. His damage, I don't think it can be dodged. If I guess that's assuming that the dodge is special skills that deal damage, because this destroys all minions is considered a part of his special skill that doesn't deal damage, so it just happens. So there are plenty of situations where it cannot be dodged and that mana can be relied on, but if it's a dodge against any special skill, then it could be dodged. But the blind rules out that as a possibility for missing and not generating your mana. So excellent hero. I talked about him a lot. Next, we've got a bunch of Season 2 heroes here. The only one I would even remotely consider is Inari, but she's also very weak. However, the highest dodge chance that I'm aware of in the game. And if you dodge, something good happens, which is you get a minion, and the minion gives mana. So it is nice. However, very squishy stats again. So toss up whether or not that is going to work for you. I don't love relying on dodge because it only works some of the time. You don't know who it's going to work for or when it's going to work. So it's kind of like revive. I'd rather not be in that situation in the first place. Don't always have that choice, and it can lower the amount of damage you're taking, but just factor that in. Cassandra, under no circumstances should you take her. Damage is way too weak. Even the costume, which is way better, is not that good. So Tomos just had a costume recently. Not good enough in my opinion. People would say, what about Mitsuko? The reflect is nice, and it is, but you still need to match 9 or 10 tiles depending on your troops, and if you do so, or you need to do so before you can get that effect. So say you're fighting a blue heavy team. If you're choosing to bring red as opposed to green, for example, which is the stronger decision because of tile damage, if you're choosing to bring red, then you are relying on her as your strategy. If there's no reds on the board, you're going to be screwed. I mean, same thing with no greens on the board, but I just want to point out that for this reflect to be worth anything, the tiles need to be there, and it can be hard to charge an average speed hero sometimes. So I don't like relying on this kind of thing because there's so many times where it doesn't work. Her damage is not that great. The mana reduction is nice, but this is the kind of thing where I'm trying to give my recommendations, but it really depends on your roster, your choices, your style teams you used, all kinds of stuff. So I can't speak to those directly for everyone, but there's things I don't like about her. Her stats are also quite weak, so keep that in mind. And Makar doesn't even need to be mentioned because he's just terrible. So the final row is going to be, or the bottom row is going to be the most compelling. We have Season 4 heroes, Season 3 heroes, which are not that old, though we know things change real quick in this game. So to go through quickly, Gefyon, I would not recommend. Decent snipe. The minion stealing thing is nice, but again, stats are pretty weak. HP is very low. Her costume is a fair bit better. But, if you had the costume and you wanted another one for another red stack or something, I could see doing that. However, as she is, I can't say that I would recommend her very highly. Heimdall could be a good way for people to get into the revive thing, like a rush attack defense team or something like that. Boosted health is nice. I think he was the original boosted health hero. Slow speed, you're going to have to deal with that, so keep that in mind. Also, you've only got a 20% revive chance, which if you're trying to count on, I simply would just not count on this for offense. If you are building a team around a 20% chance to revive a hero, you're probably going to lose. Even Mother North's 50% or Sharon, the Styx guy that revives. He has the highest revive chance that I know of, and there's still plenty of times where he doesn't revive, and you're like, well, I really needed that to happen, and it didn't. So I don't love this percent chance to dig you out of a very deep hole, because when it doesn't happen, it's disappointing, and you're done for at that point. Quite a low attack boost as well, so not a bad hero by any means. That's not the point that I'm trying to make, but I just want to evaluate as openly as I can, and if you can only choose one, those are the things you should factor in deciding if he's the right one for you. Probably the top choice in this entire portal is Lord Loki, and I think with my Fated Summon thing being full, this is probably who I'll take, because I won't ascend him to the final level. I have one with emblems at the final level, but you can still use him at 370 in rush attack, because usually those battles are over very quickly, either in your favor or against. So people use 3-star heroes, people use unmaxed 5-star heroes, etc. So he's good for that, and again, that's probably what I'll use him for. I'll take him to 370, and then I have another Alfred counter, or Ludwig counter, or, etc., etc. So the most important thing to think about with him is as follows. When he came out, people were like, this is perfect. This is my defense against overpowered heroes now and forever. And I think maybe they recognized that, and so they found a different way to go about it. One, his stats are going to be far lower than that modern overpowered hero. So if you're copying a support hero, his defense is going to limit how many hits he can take, whereas the strong new hero you're copying is going to take hits better. Same thing with attacking. He's got a decent attack stat for the time that he came out. But if you are copying an attacker that is a modern attacker, then you're probably going to struggle to do as much damage as that new hero would do, or simply you won't do as much damage. The other thing is he doesn't have any of the passives. So if you copy a Season 5 hero, whatever, hero with passives that are part of their ability, he doesn't get those. So they really broadened the way heroes work in the future that made him fall behind a little bit compared to what people thought they could expect from him. The other thing is, if you're putting emblems, you need to decide if you're going to build him as a support or as an attacker. I would recommend going more towards the support side, definitely not going full on attack, because he's a flexible hero, and I think it's better that he stays alive and gives you that utility compared to dealing a bit more damage. There will be times where that extra bit of damage will help you, but there will also be, I think, more times where him staying alive versus dying will be more of a deciding factor for the outcome of that match. So this is the one I think is most worthy of your consideration. Just factor in those things that I mentioned about what his limitations are, and that he's not this perfect, timeless counter for any hero that could come out, just because of the way they structure heroes now with really good passives and all that other kind of stuff. But still relevant if you consider those limitations, and this is probably who I'll be taking, even just to go to 370. All right, almost finished up here. So Sif, still decent, still usable. Counterattack is great. Boosted monogen is great. The damage reduction is really nice. Again, her stats are not built well for a support, so keep that in mind. The costume is also much better than this version is, so that's something to keep in mind as well. But is this a usable hero still? Absolutely. One that I stopped using because the team that she was on kind of fell apart, and I haven't found a new spot for her, but can be good. And I liked her next to Professor Leidenbrock because once I got both of them charged, that Leidenbrock gets mana at the start of the battle, which keeps her which allows her to charge at functionally fast speed when normally she's slow. And once Sif fires and both of their mana is empty, this plus 24% mana generation for 4 turns means you have 4 turns again to charge Leidenbrock or any other slow hero at functionally fast speed, though they have a particularly good synergy because they're going to fire at the same time to begin with. Whereas if you have costume Vivica or something, for example, she's going to be one turn behind Sif, and so if you then fire Sif, now you're out of sync. So something to keep in mind. A particularly good pairing between her and Leidenbrock, though maybe this is not the hero that you need. Lastly, Bira. It's been a while since much of her has been seen. Still a great minion HP at 20%. The poison and minion blocking is quite nice. And I have to say that the current tournament is Bloody Battle, and I've been using her as part of my consistent team, and I've only lost one time so far. So not only does she block the minion strategy of healing for a Bloody Battle defense team, but she gives some consistent poison damage per turn while also protecting you. So I do use her with costume Freya, which does make her better because then you have two minions. The minion damage is increased and you've got some dodge in there as well. But this is one I could consider suggesting, but in very much so in the right context, which has been true for all of my recommendations. But I just want to stress that you must think about that. And I wouldn't just take a hero individually, but I would think about what kind of team can you make? Do you have synergies that would work well with these heroes? And if you do, that decides who you should take. Don't judge them as individual heroes because you never use them as individual heroes. You use them as part of a team. And that's how you want to think about them. So, for example, say you've got Ludwig, but no way to make him fast. Maybe you take Grimble and make that an anti-minion team for yourself, etc., etc. But I would say my top recommendation is probably Lord Loki because he does what no one else can. Close behind that would be Grimble, and then it just depends on what you have outside of that. I would say Lord Loki is least dependent on synergy, but he is also still dependent on synergy because he's not going to win a battle on his own. So anyways, those are my thoughts. Maybe that's more than you bargained for, but that's just the way I think about things, and I wanted to give my full thoughts because I know for a lot of people this is a big decision to make because it can take a while to reach this 100 summon mark. So yeah, again, if you're curious and checking out a game that just functions differently and I think is a lot more generous on behalf of players, then check out Gemstone Legends. It's much more free to play, friendly. There's just so many good things about it. I've talked about it in a lot of my other videos, but like I said, I think close to 30,000 players have come from Empires and Puzzles to play Gemstone Legends and are having a great time over there. So links in the description. Don't sleep on that starter bonus. It makes a big difference. And yeah, let me know what you think of my suggestions here. If you have anything you want to add that you want other people watching the video to know, leave that below. And if you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more. Bell notification will ensure that you see the videos first. And if you already like the videos, then you know what I put out is going to be relevant for your interest as well. So go ahead and click that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.